Hello, my name is Alexander Raidl. I'm an immigration lawyer based in Vienna, Austria. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the opportunities for family reunification for immigrants in Austria. Please do not forget to subscribe to my channel. What are the most important aspects when talking about the right of residence as a family member of a person who is authorized to reside in Austria? Immigration of family members is the most important form of immigration in Austria. Whether a family member can be granted a residence title depends on the form of the relationship to the person who already has a right of residence in Austria. In principle, only spouses or registered partners and minor-aged children of persons with a right of residence in Austria can obtain a residence title as family members. For more distant relatives, this is only possible, but under more difficult conditions. Persons who are older than 18 years must always personally apply for the residence title. Children, or for children, the person who has custody for the child applies in their name. Persons who are immigrating to Austria for professional reasons, for example with the red card, in this case also the employer can apply for a residence title for the family members. Surprisingly, for citizens of the European Economic Area, which are the EU countries, plus Norway, Liechtenstein and Iceland, and also Switzerland, to bring their family members to Austria than for family members of Austrian citizens. So, when it comes to family reunification, what are the differences between family members of Austrian citizens, EEA or EU citizens, and third country nationals? The nuclear family of Austrian citizens, which is spouses, registered partners, or minor-aged children, can be granted a residence title as a family member if they fulfill all the general requirements for a residence title. More distant relatives of Austrian citizens, such as parents, grandparents, siblings, nieces or nephews, or even unmarried life partners, can also obtain a residence title in Austria, but only under certain more difficult conditions than nuclear family families. Relatives of EEA or EU citizens who are EEA citizens themselves are entitled to settle in Austria, and this is not only true for the nuclear family, but also for more distant relatives. If the relatives of the EEA citizens are third country nationals, the circle is somewhat narrower. They can also get a residence or use the European Union right of residence in Austria if they can prove either a long-lasting life partnership for not married partners, or other relatives if they had regular sponsoring through the EU citizen through regular maintenance payments, or if they have lived together in the same household before they moved to Austria, or if it is necessary for health reasons. For example, if the European Union citizen needs to take care of a relative in Austria. Finally, third country nationals who have a residence title in Austria can also obtain a residence title for their close family members, children or spouses or registered partners, but not for more distant relatives like parents or grandparents. The type of residence title nuclear family members of third country nationals can obtain depends on the residence title the person bringing the family together in Austria is already holding. If you have any questions regarding the opportunities for family reunification in Austria, or if you have other questions regarding immigration law in Austria, please do not hesitate and comment in the box below. The general requirements for a residence title. In principle, the general requirements for a residence title must also be met for family members in order to get the residence title as family members. What are those general requirements? Firstly and most importantly, family members must prove a sufficiently secure livelihood. What are the thresholds? In 2025, this is €1,273.99 for singles €2,009.85 for married couples, and another €196.57 for each child. The applicant must prove that they have this sum available after the deduction of their regular costs every month through their net income or through savings. Moreover, the applicant must prove sufficient health insurance that covers all risks in Austria, limitless. In addition, proof of local accommodation needs to be provided. This can be done, for example, through a rental contract. And the residence or the stay in Austria must not be a threat to public order and security. Finally, in most cases, also language certificate or recognized language certificate that confirms German language skills at A1 level must be provided. However, depending on the kind of residence title, there are many exceptions from this general requirements. In particular, family members of European Union or EEA citizens do not need to provide proof of this general requirements. The right of residence for family members of EU or EEA citizens. In order for family members of EU citizens to obtain a right of residence in Austria under European Union law, the family member entitled to reside in Austria must assert the European Union right of residence in Austria themselves. To do so, this person must be either self-employed or in a regular employment relationship in Austria, in training or education, or must be able to provide evidence of sufficient means of subsistence which show that the person is able to live in Austria without having to work. And moreover, the person must also prove compulsory health insurance in Austria. All the family member of such a European or EEA citizen has to do is to prove that he or she is, in fact, a family member of this person, which can be done here through providing a marriage certificate or birth certificate, for example. If this is the case, the person gets, or the family member gets a so-called residence card, which is then valid for 5 years. After those 5 years, the family member can acquire an independent right of residence under European Union law in Austria and will be issued a permanent residence card. If the EEA citizen entitled to reside in Austria dies during those 5 years, the right of residence for the family member is retained if this family member has previously resided in Austria for at least 1 year, and if they are able to fulfill the requirements for the right of residence under European Union law. Residence titles for family members of third country nationals. In order for third country nationals to obtain a residence permit for the family members in Austria, they must of course first hold a residence permit or residence title themselves. In the case of third country nationals, only close family members such as spouses, registered partners and minor-aged children can obtain a residence title or residence permit as family members. The residence title of the family member depends on the residence title the person who is already residing in Austria and brings the family together in Austria is holding. For example, family members who hold a Red card, a Red Card Plus, or a permanent residence in EU in Austria can obtain a Red Card Plus, which gives them immediately unrestricted access to the Austrian labor market. In other cases, such as family member of students, for example, they can only obtain a residence permit, and if they want to start working in Austria, they need a separate employment permit for this. Residence options for other family members. The possibility of bringing more distant relatives such as parents, grandparents, or life partners or other relatives to Austria is only available to Austrian citizens or EU or EEA citizens. The prerequisite for this is that regular maintenance has already been paid in the country of origin, or that the sponsor who moves to Austria has already lived together with the family member in the same household in the country of origin, or that it is necessary for medical reasons to bring the person to Austria, for example, when you need to take care of all the family members. In the case of unmarried life partners, the existence of a permanent relationship in the country of origin has to be proven. On the one hand, more distant family members of Austrian relatives can only obtain a residence title that does not give them access to the Austrian labor market. They would not be allowed to work with such a residence title in Austria. On the other hand, relatives of EA or EU citizens can at least be self-employed in Austria. If you have any questions about professional immigration into Austria through a red and red card, or on how to get Austrian citizenship, please don't miss my other videos. The links you find in the description box below. Family reunification and divorce. What are the consequences? If family life is cancelled due to a divorce, it must be distincted as to whether the reunifying spouse is an Austrian citizen, an EU or EEA citizen, or a third country national. While family members of third country nationals obtain an independent residency permit, which they can also extend independently if they fulfill all the necessary requirements, spouses of EU or EEA citizens need to prove that they had a marriage which lasted at least 3 years and that the spouses have lived at least one of these 3 years in Austria together in order to continue the right of residence under European Union law. For spouses of Austrian citizens, there is no required minimum duration of the marriage, but if the divorce takes place before the spouse has acquired the right of permanent residence in Austria, they must fulfill all the general requirements for a residence title themselves, which is sufficient income, own accommodation, comprehensive health insurance, and basic German language skills. When talking about family reunification in Austria, we also need to talk about the residence marriage and the risks connected with it. A residence marriage is a marriage between a person authorized to reside in Austria and a third country national, entered into only for the purpose to obtain a residence title in Austria for the third country national. Such residence marriages are not permitted and have several negative consequences. If it turns out that the residence title was granted on the basis of a residence marriage, the residence title will be cancelled and the authority will retrospectively cancel all residence periods in Austria, which means the family member will be put in the same legal position as before the residence title was granted. In addition, entering into a residence marriage for a person entitled to reside in Austria is also a criminal offense, punishable by a fine, and if this is done in return for a payment, even by imprisonment. If the authority has suspicion that the marriage could be a residence marriage, they are entitled to send the police to the home of the spouses, and the police check whether the people really live together. For example, they look into the bathrooms and check if there are 2 toothbrushes there, for example. And finally, a residence marriage can also result in a ban on entering into Austria for a period of up to 5 years, meaning that the family member who profited from this residence marriage has to leave the country and will not be able to return for at least 5 years. In summary, the opportunities for family members to obtain a residence permit in Austria very much depends on the legal situation of the person already residing in Austria or already holding a residence title in Austria. Please carefully check which way is the correct one in your situation, and if you need any help with this, I'm gladly at your disposal. You find my contact details in the description box below. Please do not hesitate to call me or write me an email or book an appointment on my website for an initial consultation. Thank you very much for watching this video until the end. Please do not forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button not to miss any new uploads.